Ladies and gentlemen, what is up? Culture Discourse Podcast.
Yeah.
Super Bowl week. Except we ain't gonna be talking nothing Super Bowl related, really. We'll review it next week.
Yeah.
Figure it out. But I hit you up about this last week, and I came across this documentary on Hulu, and it was random because I forgot what I was watching. I think I was watching Lil Rel's show.
Yeah.
His sitcom on Hulu. And I think I finished the last episode, and like it just recommended me this documentary, and it was like something about skateboarding related and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, cool. You know, I grew up Orange County, and like in skateboarding, kind of that was part of our thing. It was that playing basketball and just kind of getting into shit. So I just saw the documentary. It looked interesting. I was like, all right, might as well check it out. I started watching it, and immediately like because I was just kind of like, oh, I'll just watch it as I was cooking food and stuff.
Yeah.
And I started watching it, and like 5 minutes into it, I stopped, and I was like, okay,
I gotta sit down.
No, I need to sit down and like fully take this in.
Yeah.
And so, I'm gonna real quickly just kind of read a description about the documentary and what it's about. So this is off of Rotten Tomatoes, and so the description of the documentary is it's a compiling over 12 years of footage shot in his hometown of Rockford, Illinois. In Minding the Gap, Bing Liu searches for correlations between his skateboarder friends' turbulent upbringings and the complexities of modern-day masculinity. As the film unfolds, Bing captures 23-year-old Zach's tumultuous relationship with his girlfriend, deteriorate after the birth of their son, and 17-year-old Kieri struggling with his racial identity as he faces new responsibilities following the death of his father, while navigating a difficult relationship between his camera, his friends, and his own past. Bing ultimately weaves a story of generational forgiveness while exploring the precocious gap between childhood and adulthood. So, this is a really, really phenomenal documentary, and it's one of those that like was very low key. It got released last August, and people are just now talking about it. And it got nominated for best documentary or Oscar. And I mean, I haven't seen any of the other documentaries, but like to me, this could easily win. I know, actually, I'm not sure if the Mr. Rogers one got nominated. That's the only other documentary I remember like hearing a lot of hype over, but I'm not even sure if that one got nominated. So like this could easily win it. It got 100 on Rotten Tomatoes. So if you're listening to this,
go watch it.
Go watch it first, then come back and finish this because we're gonna spoil the crap out of it. But it's also worth watching it.
Definitely.
It's a really cool documentary. For me, I liked it because, like I mentioned, growing up in California. Like I grew up, it was just very like I grew up in like the skate culture, and we like hung out at Liberty Skate Park. That was like the skate park by kind of in our neighborhood in the area we lived at, and so it was always like after school. That was the hangout spot. We'd hang out there. Weekends we were there. That was just a spot. I remember like the ice cream man that used to come by there. He legit would sell skateboards and decks and different stuff out of his ice cream truck, and like that, it was just like it was skateboarding. Like it's such a huge thing in Southern California, and especially like 90s, 2000s, and I'm sure even earlier beyond that. But it's been cool also, I think, how the skate culture kind of has been getting like people have been getting a look into it. So I think for people that like if you didn't grow up in it, this is like a great look into like the significance of the skate culture for so many people that like grew with it. And it just like for me, like I said, I mentioned I grew up in it, and it wasn't one of those like I was great at skating or anything like that. Like I could ride around the park, I can go up down ramps, I could do a couple tricks and stuff like that. But I was nowhere like good or anything like that. Like I could do the bare minimum, do some tricks and all that. But it was just more of like that community, that like group of friends that I developed through just kind of being at the park and stuff like that. And so for me, it was cool just kind of, because I've lived in North Carolina now for about 10 years, I think. And like, it was just basically for me watching that documentary, it was almost like a flashback to my childhood. And so it was really cool. So that's kind of my initial thoughts on it. But you just watched it. So what are your thoughts?
There's so much here, and you and I I probably should have saved you for this, but you and I were just talking about how, like, one of my first impressions, especially in the beginning, really the first half hour or so, I kept thinking just over and over and over again, bro, I know these guys. These are cats that I like grew up with.
Yeah.
And just as a disclaimer, I grew up around the skate culture, and for the short period of time that I was a part of it, I knew pretty quick skating wasn't going to be the thing that I did. But I learned so fast, and it's one of the reasons why skating is one of the most. And I think colorblind isn't even quite the right term. It's probably one of the more inclusive communities that I've ever been a part of and seen and observed. And I think one of the really great things that this achieves, that this documentary achieved, almost by accident. Very early on, this wasn't even his goal.
Yeah,
like this wasn't Bing's goal at all.
Yeah, and because like he's been doing it over he filmed this over 12 years, and I think it's just one of those. That's what made it so unique, because like initially I knew nothing about it going on. It just popped up. I was like, I might watch it. And as I was watching it, I was like, wait, he looks a lot older now. And I quickly began, okay, so you filmed this over time. Because it was like, it started with like Zach and his girlfriend. It was like,
right.
Early on, it's like him talking about them having a baby. Yep. And then 10 minutes later, like, there's the baby and stuff. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, yeah. So you filmed this over time. And like, yeah, it's just it reminded me of the movie Boyhood. I don't know if you've seen that, where like I love Boyhood, because Boyhood was kind of the same thing, where it was this movie. I forgot the director that made it, but it was basically exploring just a boy growing up. Yeah, and I think it was filmed over like a 10-year period, where like he just every year or every like couple of years they got together and they filmed a different part of the movie. And so I think projects like that are so hard to do, because it's just like
it takes an incredible amount of like foresight.
Yeah,
but it's crazy because even when you listen to him to Bing talk, it was. This very much began as like he was just kind of trying to create like montages and like capture some of the stuff
and that's one of those things, like growing up in that culture, there's always that one guy within the crew that records everything. Because like skateboarding and all, everyone's trying to make it, everyone's trying to get sponsored. Like that's the end goal for all skaters. Like when you get sponsored, that's when you made it. Yeah. And even if it's like some local skate shop or something, just the idea of like getting like being able to brag that like you're sponsored by this, that's like, that's just the ultimate win right there. And so, you would always see at the park, there's somebody skating around recording, and like people are making their own mixtapes of them skating and stuff like that. And so I could definitely tell from beginning with Bing, that's kind of what that started off as, because it's just most of it, he's just recording them skate and stuff like that. And so it's cool, because like I said, that's 12 years ago while he was still in high school, maybe even middle school.
Right.
But just kind of seeing, like, I want to, and I should have researched it more, but I want to see just kind of how like at what turning point did he realize like he had something special there, and like where he's like, okay, like there's a little more here, and he just kind of kept collecting it.
Well, see that's the thing that kind of, and I think the New York Times Review describes this in an okay way, but I'm not even sure if this is even quite kind of captures what happens. And the New York Times Review mentions the cameraman's father's passing away.
Yeah.
And the sentence that it uses, the wording that it uses, that it almost because of the way that this whole thing is composed, it takes the audience as much by surprise as it does being like you're experiencing things in real time. But even as I was watching, everything is like that.
Yeah.
Everything.
That is
like, and
you're experiencing everything. It's not like scripted or anything. Like all the reactions are naturally right there, and like he has some tough conversations, and he asks him some questions on the spot, and like you just genuinely see where you're like you just feel the like uncomfortableness of the moment, and like it's like almost you're in the same room and you're just like,
right. Well, we could literally spend like 3 episodes on this, because as I was like thinking about all the, and because we talked a little, we just literally just mentioned inclusiveness and race, and even now I'm thinking the Kier's character, and when they have that, when he asks, he's talking to him about his life, and he talks about being disciplined.
Yeah.
As soon as that word came out of his mouth, because that, like, for an entire generation, if you know what that word means.
Yeah.
You know what that word means. It means you got beat.
Yeah.
That's the thing was, beat was only a word that you could use inside that culture, because when you said beat to anybody else, they immediately, like, red flags would go off. Like, we're talking about something else. Where to us, it was like normal. Like, I got spanked, like I did whatever it was.
And you even noticed that, I think when he was talking to Kier, I'm probably going to butcher his name every time, but when he first, like, Kier mentioned that his dad was beating him, and like he was going to straight come out and say it, but he also was like, he kind of danced around it, where he was just like, my dad used to whoop me, but I mean, that was the thing, like, that was the thing where it's like, it's not child. He tried to, like,
right.
It's not
the
like
very
it's
first
like,
conversation. He goes, okay, well, today they would call it child abuse.
Yeah.
He kind of trails off, and he goes, and he looks down. That, I'm telling you, an entire generation of people, if they've watched this documentary, an entire generation of people, hearts dropped when they watched that, because everybody knew what he was talking about and knew what was going on in that family. Now, there's different degrees of it depending on which family you were in, but everybody knows what discipline means. But yeah, there was so much even leading up to that conversation when he's filming the room, and like the room's a mess, right? The room is an absolute mess.
Yeah.
There was just so much that felt like it was filmed by accident, but it contributed so much to the context.
Just overall, yeah.
Like the fact that he happened to capture the fact that he has to that he unlocks his own room, like that was one of those things where I was just kind of like, man, and I thought about that. I thought about that a lot too. It was like, at what point did this dude realize that he had something that was eventually like going to be groundbreaking?
Yeah.
And I don't use that term lightly. I think this could be one of the more impactful or important documentaries in a while. But yeah, stuff like that where I was kind of just like, man, at what point did this dude realize that he has something truly, truly special? I mean, the blending between the early footage, the middle footage, and like the late footage, because it's all blended.
Yeah.
But it's trying to go in a somewhat chronological order, and when it removes itself from chronology, it's for the purpose of adding like context. It's just so, and again, the post-production stuff, we could talk about it forever, but no, I don't know. I have no idea at what point the dude was realizing, was like, okay, this is important.
Yeah, and the other thing that, like, to add on to that, where I want to know that part, because it's like, when the documentary starts, you could see the initial focus was on Kier.
Yeah. And,
but kind of towards, like, the middle, middle beginning type, it kind of, he starts tying Zach in, and then you quickly, like, Zach becomes engulfed with the story with him and his girlfriend.
Yep.
And so that's like another point where I was like, just trying to figure out. I was like, okay, at what point did you realize like, oh, like there's like something more here, and like started drawing their story in more. So it's just it's so fascinating, like just that whole process, and just like because like that all was just developing on its own, and he was just it's crazy. And he must have had so much footage also over 12 years. So like so the whole documentary is an hour and a half.
Yep.
But this is like showing the past 12 years of these people's lives. So it's just crazy.
I mean, and it's nuts too, because even like early on, you see when they start pulling the stuff that you could tell was filmed very recently, where he's filming, like you see him cruising around and he's filming with this big old camera, which, by the way, shout out to the people in like the 90s and the early 2000s that wanted to film their stuff, because bro, that had to be so difficult.
Oh yeah, you're lugging around this big old camcorder.
Now you got cameras with the wrist straps. You got
everybody's
everybody's
a filmmaker now.
Yeah, you got the gimbals and the stabilizers and the monopods and all that stuff. We had people that literally were carrying around 15, 20 pound cameras.
Yeah,
or
getting made fun of it.
Camcorders, right?
Yeah.
Running out of film.
It's
running out of film.
Gosh, dude. Yeah, you had to deal with film.
Oh my gosh.
Battery.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, side note, shout out to all those people that had to deal with that.
Those are the true OGs, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
But one of the things, and
but at the same time, I'm just gonna say, I'm so happy. Like, we didn't have smartphones and stuff when I was like elementary.
Yeah.
Because me and my friends got in a lot of like crap and stuff like that, and we were just dumb. And that's
no jobs for any of us.
Yeah.
We ain't
and that's the thing where like just growing up in that culture, you just do dumb stuff, and like you saw that with like in the documentary where the thing about the skate culture and all is just when you look at it on the outside, it's like, oh, all these kids are a bunch of assholes. They're just a little douchey and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like as you saw the story unpacked, you just see it's like most of these kids, they got so much going on at home and all that like skating and just being in that environment is just their time to cut loose and like just be ridiculous. And like that is a big part of what that culture is. And like the other so mid-90s, it's the movie by Jonah Hill came out last year, and that was another movie revolving around the skate culture, and it was really cool. I watched it. The acting in there, some of the people were horrible and stuff, but I love the story and overall just him kind of exploring the skate culture, because Jonah Hill, like he was talking about it, he grew up in it, and he was the same where he's like, I wasn't great at skating or whatever, but that was just like, that was a huge part of me when I was younger on. And he had the same, where I think a lot of people realize it afterwards, like how big like that culture impacted your life and like just the significance of it. And so mid-90s, I would encourage you to check it out. But that one basically revolves around a younger kid that kind of gets adopted into the skate culture, and you see like the good and the bad of it, because like that is a big thing where you kind of, it's just once you're in, like you're in and like you're good for life. And that's one of the things I think that mid-90s explores, and even this film explores, where a lot of them like you don't have that feeling of like you fit in or stuff. Like you come from a broken family, and so I think all of them coming from a broken family, most of them have different issues going on at home. It's kind of them clustering together.
So
at the skate park.
So this is what I wanted to talk with you about, and to kind of get your input and your thoughts, because one of the things that I realized early on, and I didn't really know how to process through it when I was younger, but every time we have an opportunity to observe, and you talked about the skate culture getting more exposure recently, which I think is really, really good, because you talked about like on the surface, sometimes it could just be like, oh, this is just a bunch of bros, or, you know, in some cases, oh, these are a bunch of just like almost subcategory frat boys, almost in a sense, where it's so much more than that. And it's crazy because I kind of looped back around in my brain, and I think, well, really, I I know that one of the reasons why the skate culture is so inclusive is because everybody's coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
And when I say coming from somewhere, I think a lot of times you have a lot of guys who are looking for, guys and girls who are looking for an escape from something, that when they all show up at the same spot, it don't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
And that word escape, and like you talk about freedom, and it's so incredibly captured in this documentary because every single one of them has something they're trying to get away from, that they're trying to process through in a way that like they can't process through it at home.
No.
They cannot process through it at home.
Yeah.
We're talking about one household that's super, super strict. Actually, two households that were super, super strict. One just left the house super early, and you have another one who was basically physically abused.
And it's one of those situations where I think a lot of people deal also with, where it's like dad's not there, real dad's not there, mom remarries, and it kind of deals with that. And in that, like, I kind of tied in closer to Bing's story, and even with like, I'm probably closer with Bing's story, where it was like, for me, it was like my mom and my stepdad, and like my stepdad's been in my life all my life and stuff, but it was just younger on, we clashed a lot, and a lot of that was it was just like a easy, like when you're pissed off or something, it's just easy to be like, well, screw you, you're not my real dad and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it's just little things like that. And so like, yeah, it brought three unique like household situations into the fold, and they all kind of intertwined in some way. But yeah, and I think that's kind of breaking down the skate culture. We're gonna be all over this place, kind of talking about it, because there's just so much to unpack about it.
Yeah.
But one of the things, like early on, kind of as you saw the movie gradually going through, is like I was saying, growing up in that culture and all. It's like it's great. But at the same time, like the documentary shows you like the good and the bad of it. And I think one of the biggest things it takes a look at is toxic masculinity, obviously. And I think also just with the 90s and the 2000s and the skate culture, like it's just crazy to me now, where like people, I think we're just more aware of like the effects of toxic masculinity, and like obviously you can't be saying like, hey, that's gay anymore, stuff like where we know like, hey, like, okay, like that's not, you can't be joking like that and stuff like that. But that was the culture in the mid 90s in 2000, where it was just like, oh my gosh, like if you you recorded any of those stuff, and like people would not make it. And
well, like I even think about simple stuff, and what's crazy is nothing traumatic happened, but I'll never forget it. I don't know why. You remember when like Smear the Queer was just like a normal game, like a completely normal game. We would play this game called Smear the Queer, which is basically like tag, except you would tackle them.
Yeah,
like that's basically what tag is, or what the game was. Except we would literally play it in PE. Like, the teacher would be like, "All right, we're gonna play it, Smear the Queer, whatever." And what's crazy is back then you don't really. And look, I grew up in Northern California. You would think that something like that would not be allowed, even back then.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy, even though like the little thing stuff that we completely taken for granted. And you said something I think is just so significant, in that we're more aware of it now. And I think we're more aware of it now because all the kids that were like subject to it, that got a taste of like, man, it should be different, they're all adults now.
And they're finally like speaking up.
Yeah,
like,
they're all adults now.
Yeah.
You talk about the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Like, these are grown folk now.
Yeah.
So it's, man.
And I mean, a lot of people that like mid 90s, like it's millennials. The millennials are the ones that have kind of shifted that narrative, and like now, and it's one of those where it's tough because it's like you get the people like, oh, we got to be so socially like we got to be. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it's like you just got to be so safe about what you say and stuff like that. But it's just like, dude, time's different and stuff, and it's just like it's one of those we know where like, before, like when people say that's gay or whatever, it was one of those like you're not actually referring to like
anything homosexual.
Yeah. It's just like saying like that's stupid.
That's bad. That's stupid.
That's dumb.
That's whack.
It was just one of those. But as like the times realize and kind of with just the LGBT community, and that's coming like as we're becoming more welcoming of them, and like you see how our society has changed the narratives on how we like look at them, and kind of they're getting rights to get married and all that, and that's all awesome. And like because like yeah, like what they've had to deal with is garbage and all that, and so it's just one of those where like they're speaking up about it, and it's like, hey, like you may think like you're saying this, but it's like this is how it really affects us,
right?
And that's like that's the way where you look at it with the N-word, where it's just like, yo, like if you look at it in that example, it's like, okay, yeah, I understand. Like I wouldn't want some white dude come by and saying like N-word please and stuff like that. And it's like he might not mean it maliciously, but it's like it's that same way where he might be dude, he might just mean it as a dude, but it's still like for me it means something different than for him. So like that's I think the biggest thing with just kind of how the culture shifted now, and people are more understanding of that. And then man, like one of the things I noticed early on, kind of just at the beginning of the documentary, like they trashed on each other a lot.
Yeah,
they trashed on each other a lot, and it's one of those you like they trashed on each other, but like everyone was trashing on someone. And that was another one of those things with like skate culture where I think it's interesting because like we said, it was one of those like once you were able to get in with whether if it was even your group of friends or like you got in with some group of others, it was like one of those like you became part of the crew, and like everyone had each other's back. And I felt that like that was one of the things I always appreciated, because it was one of those like I knew my friends always had my back no matter what, and like
it was safe.
Yeah, it was like the security is like they got my back, and you just it gave you almost this sense of like fearlessness where like I'm telling you, looking back at it, we did so much dumb shit.
Oh yeah.
But it was just one of those where like we felt invincible, because it's like as long as I got y'all by my side, like we're good. And so like we'd just be doing dumb stuff, and especially like dealing with cops is a huge thing in the skate culture in the 90s and stuff. Just skating when you're not supposed to be, or like it was just cops always beef with skaters, and so it was always one of those you'd be running away from the cops. It's just little stuff like
yeah. This is why I get so heated about, and this is why I get so heated about some of the kids that we went to school with at Cary High, because there'll be people who, oh, yeah, F the police, yada, yada, and they don't even know why they're supposed to dislike the police. Whereas, like, when you grow up in a place where a certain race has a legitimate reason to be afraid of the cops, or on top of that, you hang out with skaters all the time, and skaters associate cops with one thing and one thing only. I came here to escape from whatever I came to escape from, and you are trying to prevent me from doing that. Ain't nobody out here.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody out here. We're just trying to skate. That's like that's it. But no, you say that and it strikes a nerve with me, because when I moved here, there are all these people who, and again, like people, we associate young people with being anti-authority, and that's okay. But it always ticked me off when I run into people who had zero reason to dislike police. Yeah. And they wanted to make it cool. Yeah. The fact that they were like, at the police, all that stuff. I was like, yo, you need to step off. There's people who legitimately have reason to like they tangle with these cats every day.
Every day. And it's one of those things where it's like it's fair on both sides. You can see it on both sides with the cops and with like the skaters. Yeah. But like there would be times where we'd just be hanging out. We'd be hanging out at the skate park, and like cops would come by and everybody would just run because like nobody wore helmets, and that was one of the things of the skate park. Yep. But it was like unless you're 5 years old or younger, like nobody's wearing a helmet. But it was just one of those like if they wanted to start shit for no reason, they would just come bust the skate park, and if you didn't have a helmet on, like they'll try to arrest you or give you a ticket or whatever.
Yeah.
So as soon as you see a cop car pull up, everyone just dips, and like you just see swarm, everyone running every different direction.
Gone.
And so situations like that, it's like, all right, like stop tripping over some dumb stuff. Like you guys are just trying to like start something at that point. But then there's times where it's like we'll jump the fence and like skate on the schoolyard or whatever. Somewhere we're obviously somewhere we're obviously not supposed to be. Cops will come get mad at us, and it's like at that time we're like mad at, like we're like, oh screw y'all or whatever, but it's like in real like, hey, we trespass, we're not supposed to be there. But that's one of those things I think where it became a back and forth clash where it just like y'all are always getting on our nerves, so you know what, we're just gonna kind of rebel in this way. So yeah, I mean, just so much dumb stuff. I
don't know. I just got a kick push in my head just now. Just thinking about this.
What?
This Lupe kick push.
Oh yeah, kick push.
Yes,
kick, push
coast.
And away we go.
Yeah, man. Yeah. There's so. So I say like we could easily go like 3 episodes. Yeah. Just talking about everything that's in there. You talk about toxic masculinity, and one of the things that comes up really quick with all 3 of them is the role of the man in a household. Yeah. And one dude you talk about, I think it's Zach, is he's thrust into dad roles so fast. And when I was looking at Kier and then Zach, it was nuts almost like, because each one represented a season of my life, not in the sense of that's what I went through at that time, but each person represented basically the friend groups and stuff that I had over the course of my life. Where Kier was Oakland, like that's like that literally, like he represents Oakland. Bing was Martinez, because once you get outside, well, really Oakland some of it too, but the culture is super super Asian. Ton of Hispanics, but super, super Asian. And like, so when you look at like the Asian household and how that, like the dynamics of that, like it was just crazy to kind of observe that. And then Zach was Carrie and had Carrie written all, like it was literally, Zach reminded me so much some of these cats from Carrie High, bro. It was just so nuts to be able to watch this and go, yo, these 3 dudes were literally the 3 places that I've lived in my life, like leading up to the end of my high school career. But the expectations that are put on a man hit these guys so hard. And I think that's the thing that's going to get talked about the most, even despite the fact that the skate culture is exposed so well in this. I think the expectations that we place on young men, really boys in general, is what's going to be talked about. As people notice this documentary more, it's going to be what people talk about, I think, the most. Yeah. Going forward.
Yeah. And I think that's the part, like, you just see him grow through it, and I think that's one of the things that's unique with the film is that the fact that you see, like, mainly between Zach and Kiri, you just see both of them at some point where they're like, okay, like for Kiri, it's just like, okay, like I'm 18 right now, like I can't just keep skating around and just doing this and whatever forever. Like I gotta start figuring out my life, and like I gotta figure out a job, and like as great as this is, I don't want to just be doing this all the time. And you kind of see him progress from there, where he just is little stuff where like he gets a job working at a restaurant and he's just doing dishes and stuff. And one of my favorite moments was like when they fast forward later and he gets his job, like he's now a server, and like he's just talking about like you just see how genuinely happy he is that like he's like, there's just a pile of dishes in the back. He's like, I don't have to do that shit anymore. And like he's just so excited, and like I almost got teary eyed at that moment because it's just like I've had a job like that where it's like you get to a point where it's like I don't have to do that crap anymore. Like I worked hard and like I finally like got over that point, and like that part was just so cool to me. Where it's just that something that simple, and seeing that pure excitement, it's just like it left me. I was emotional watching it. I was just like, that's so cool. And it's little things like that like you appreciate like you go through the process, and then it's until afterwards you look at it and like you appreciate it, and you just that becomes such a pivotal point for him, because from there you just kind of see how he's turning his life around, and not even like his life. It's not even like he was like doing terrible crap or all that. It was just one of those, like, you see growth. That's what it is. Right, you see him grow and like kind of mature, and just that was really cool.
And it's captured, like, and again, we're not talking about a movie. I think there have been a ton of really good movies
this is like authentic.
This is literally through the eyes of a best friend. And and that was one of those scenes where, like, that kind of hit me too, especially when he like, when you point at something and you go, I don't have to do that anymore. But the only way you can say that you can appreciate that you don't have to do something is if you did it. That's the only way that you can truly appreciate not having to do something. Yeah, is if you did it. And what's so interesting, last night, Kara and I are watching this Gabriel Iglesias' newest Netflix special. And it's kind of crazy. Like, I got a little bit emotional because I realized, oh shoot, I low-key been watching Gabriel Iglesias for like 18 years. Like, that's how long he been doing his thing. And the whole thing plays out like it's his last one. Really? Almost to the point where I was like, bro, is he done? Like, he literally, he ends his set going with like 10 minutes left and literally goes, all right, I'm just going to do old jokes. And y'all are going to help me out with them. And he starts the joke when he gets the box of Krispy Kreme donuts and the cop pulls him over. Yeah. And literally he just stops. And it was like a concert, bro. Yeah, and they were literally just reciting. And like, I got misty-eyed. And at one point during the thing, because he always brings up his son. And it's crazy because his son, and he's in almost all of his stand-up stuff. Yeah. The cat's 19.
That's wild.
And he says something. I promise you, this relates to that. I didn't just bring this up. He says something because he's at this point. He's 19. He likes watching streamers and cats play video games, but he's not really doing much else. And they go into a Red Lobster, and he gets frustrated in a conversation about potentially working there because the kid goes, Frankie literally goes, I don't want to work at Red Lobster. Yeah. And Gabriel goes, well, you better be thinking about something. Yeah. And he starts describing, like, no comedic element whatsoever. He starts describing this problem where a lot of young people want stuff to just happen to them.
Yeah, like an instant gratification.
And then the reason why it frustrates him so much is because when he looks back at his career, he had to bust his tail. Yeah. But he says something so interesting in it. I actually thought about this Netflix special while I'm watching the Minding the Gap. Yeah. Because Gabriel Iglesias, everybody's laughing. Or no, they weren't laughing. He mentions that this generation doesn't want to work for, and literally everybody starts clapping. And while they're in the middle of clapping, he goes, and it's my fault. And I literally paused it right there, and I was like, because I've been thinking about this a lot. There's an entire generation that's complaining about the generation under them. And I looked at Kara and I was like, this is something I will never understand because the younger generation is the older generation's kids.
Yeah. You're pissed off because you messed up, essentially.
I've never understood that. Yeah. And for Gabriel to get up there, everybody's clapping because the younger generation is lazy, yada, yada, yada. They're all clapping and going, oh, I've been trying to tell my kid this, right? Clapping. And he follows it up without skipping a beat. He goes, yeah, it's my fault. And I was like, ooh. And I thought about that so much while I was watching this because there's three extremely distinct situations. But I wonder, as much as the expectations that are set up on those kids, I wonder how much of their responsibility falls on the generation behind them. Yeah. Yeah. So like it is kind of wild to observe that, especially within this context. Not a movie. We're not talking about a movie. We're talking about a doc. Yeah. So that was something that really, as I wrapped it up, of the literally dozen things I was thinking through, would definitely stuck with me.
Yeah. And like I said, it's just there's so many different dynamics that like you see of like people that have gone through it. Yeah. Or like one of the other ones that like stood out to me is like when Carrie has like he mentions that she's got a new boyfriend, and so he's you just kind of you get a glimpse into the relationship at first where he's like going to ask his mom something and like the dude answers. You don't see the dude or anything. He's just I think he was answering about like doing laundry or something like that.
Woo!
The dude
Yeah.
answers and like he kind of talks. He's like, yeah, my mom's got a new boyfriend. I don't really like him or whatever, but whatever.
Mhm.
And so and then it fast forwards and like they're sitting there. Bing's interviewing the mom and he asks her and it's like, hey, I heard you got a new boyfriend. And she just kind of gets uncomfortable and like cause like like kind of like, oh, we're gonna be talking about that or whatever.
Right.
And then in the
Right.
background you just hear the dude and it's like, nah, that's not gonna be, we're not gonna be recording none of that. And then dude goes and tells her, hey, you got your 5 minutes is up or something like that. And you just hear that and I was just
I'm telling you, if you've grown up anywhere remotely, even if you went through it or grew up
like
with a friend that went through it,
yeah.
literally your brain is firing off at this point of like.
And that was the
yo,
thing for me. Like I never had that at firsthand, but I know people
Yes.
that have had
Yes.
people like that in their life, and like that. Like
yeah.
I just heard that and I was like,
your whole body tenses up.
yeah,
watching
and
that.
like
Your whole body tenses
yeah,
up.
and like like you get later in the movie, and it's like a few years later, and Bing asks her like how are you and your boyfriend, and she just kind of like, oh, he's never my boyfriend, and like nah, he basically she just curses him out, and like you could tell like
Mm-hmm.
it was a toxic relationship, but like she finally got out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that would be interesting to kind of like the movie explores in a way, because you look at it with Bing's mom also, where I think a lot of, for people, especially women that like lose their husbands early on and then kind of from that point are trying, like when they try to find some, because I think there's that tension of like loneliness where like
Yes.
you're feeling the loneliness and you're trying to get back into it. And I think it's still so fresh and you're still like vulnerable and you're going to carry that like hurt of losing that significant other with you from that point on. And I think you get so many guys that kind of like feed on their vulnerability and just kind of that weakness of like you're dealing with this emotional pain and like I'm going to use you as mine. And so you kind of see it with Kiari and like her mom's short-term boyfriend, and then also with Bing and his mom, and like she kind of explains it where she's like she just got into it and she made him feel so happy, and so she saw one side of him and Bing saw another side of him, and like and that was another cool part because like she was just kind of, you could tell she was talking that out in the air. And she made that realization
it, yep.
And she just got emotional. And that got me also because it was just one of those, I think, that happens with a lot of families where...
Oh, yeah. There are a ton of kids who know a side of their step-parent right now.
Yeah.
That their mom or dad do not know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have not seen it.
Yeah.
Because the kid
and that's
is
why
not
I
the
think,
focus of
and that's
that.
why I think you see now, especially like with the Me Too movement and stuff, you hear a lot about like people getting abused when they were younger and stuff like that, and it's like all those stories come out, and all these people, and like when people is like, why didn't you tell anyone, or like, oh, I don't know how we missed this or stuff, it's like, no, like I'm sure there's at some point a way like that person tried to tell you, but like you were just so fixated on this person that like you couldn't see past that. Or the other part of it is just like this person, like I think kids especially like with moms, like kids love their moms so much and like want to look out for them. I think it's one of those, you see someone happy and you just kind of like hide
I'm gonna
that
just
pain.
sacrifice me. I'm gonna sacrifice me. That's
me.
what we're getting out of this. Mom happy.
It's like it's like you don't want to bring that up, you're just too scared to. And so that was interesting. As far as that relationship, him just kind of exploring that. And I also think that's another part of just this whole recording thing where I think as those stories were starting to like he was starting to tell the stories of Kieri and Zach, I think that eventually led to him kind of talking with his mom and kind of sitting down, because I think him getting a glimpse into those stories is kind of just like, hey, I got to look at my own and like start to put some of this together and like get some closure on some of this stuff. I think that must have compelled him to do that.
Low key, when you get like 20-30 minutes in, and the person I was most concerned with was because he had almost a double buffer, where skating already acts as a buffer between you and whatever it is that you're struggling with or having to deal with. And see, Bing has skating and the camera. And the camera adds this other layer of like, I'm taking this all in, like I'm processing this, but
I'm the storyteller. I don't share.
Yeah, I'm this barrier.
Or so like I'm the story capturer, but I don't share.
And so for a good chunk of it, he was the person, and it was cool to see where it was like, I might have to like, it made him more observant of what was going on in his own life. Yeah, which was really cool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, for a good chunk of it, I was most worried about that because we're already, this thing started with let's film our collective escape. Mm-hmm. So there's that buffer, but then also again the layer that's created by filming that, because you're a part of it, but you're not. But yeah, over time, you're exactly right. Where it was this he becomes more aware of what's going on. Not even aware. I think he sees the need to process through it, the way that he's almost stumbled upon the process of stumbling, or process of processing through his friend's stuff too. So
and then the thing that stood out to me the most with the Zach and what was his girl's name?
I forget.
I have it somewhere in here. Nina.
Okay.
Zach and Nina. So Zach and Nina were in a relation. I think it's one of those where they're dating, and then they had like he knocked her up. And then basically it's one of those, it's like a lot happens with a lot of people.
Like what, 16?
Yeah, 16. They were young. He knocked her up. And then at that point is one of those, early on, super excited, or like we're having a kid. And I think that one like his story explores so much stuff. And like early, like with the kid stuff, it explores like how having a kid forces you to grow up really quickly.
Oh yeah.
And it was basically like Teen Mom, but like not Teen Mom, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where it's just like you see Teen Mom and the drama and all that BS, but like you like here it is.
This was as
in actuality
real and raw as it got.
Yeah, not over like dramatized or with all the MTV BS. But yeah, you kind of just see early on super excitement. Then they have the kid, and one of the interesting things like you saw explore with it, I think at the point where the kid's like 1 or 2, they're both basically working nonstop, because like when one's not working, the other one's taking care of the kid. When one's not taking care of the kid, they're working, and you see Zach struggling with trying to find work, and him kind of, I think you see the where there's that point where he goes to the testing center, and was he taking a test to get his G? I don't know what he was doing, but it was something obviously educated related. But he was kind of like, he went in to take the test, and he came out. He's like, the questions were confusing, and they just like he was just kind of like, you saw he didn't do well on whatever it was, and he was basically trying to do that to make his way for a better job. But I think that in part explores also just for those kids, like the ones that kind of throw education away early on, or that don't finish high school. Yeah. And then you're in a situation where you're forced to grow up real quickly. And then I think you see him reminisce back on that a little, where he's just like, dang, I should have taken school a little more serious, and like just the impact of that on trying to get a good job or whatever, and not just having BS all the time. And that's one of those things that like I always had also, where like for me it wasn't as bad because like I was always good at doing the bare minimum. I knew like I knew how to do enough to like get by and like get the
Yeah.
grades I need. I did
Same.
what I needed, not to like excel.
Yeah.
But it's one of those, like, looking back, it's like I could have probably saved myself some time and extra work if I just like put in the extra time and all that. And so that's one thing I think you explore with Zach's story. But going on with the part talking about how like once the kid is like 1 or 2 years old, no, I think it was still like maybe when the baby was 1. Zach's basically watching the kid when she's working, and she's watching the kid when he's working. And at this point, I think she's 21, or he had mentioned, yeah, she just turned 21, and they were arguing because she like got home from work and she was like basically going out to go out with some friends. It was like, yo, what the frick? Why are you going out? It's like, I'm hanging out with some friends and stuff, and like they get into this argument. He's like,
Yeah.
like you're a mom now, you can't be going out all the time and stuff. And he's like, and she's just upset, and it's like, you know, they're cursing each other out, and she's just like, nah, blah blah blah, whatever, like this is my time, I need this, like I already told you about this, that I was gonna go out with them and stuff. And so she just kind of, he curses her out, she storms out, closes the door, and he mentions where it's like she just turned 21 and she likes going out with her friends and wants to go out, like drinking and stuff like that. Like now she turned 21 so she could drink and stuff, so she wants to live it up and all. And he's like, I understand that, but it's like, you got a kid now, like you can't just be doing that.
Yeah.
And so I think that part explores like how having a kid forces you to grow up quickly. And like I obviously didn't have a kid when I was young or stuff like that, and you see it with so many people. And I had a couple of friends that I grew up with that had kids early on, and it's one of those, it's easy for looking from the inside, outside, you judge them.
Yeah.
But it's one of those, like, is you just don't fully understand like how much that affects. Like it just changes everything, where it's like it forces you to grow up so fast. And like just watching their relationship where they're both very immature, and like they had no reason to be raising a child.
Yeah.
But like you see both of them struggling with like, look, I need to grow up, but at the same time, like I'm 21, I want to go out, I want to do things people my age are doing,
right?
But I can't do that,
right?
And yeah, that was like a big part of the relationship. And part of it also, I think, it's just one of those, you see like the dangers of just like young relationships like that, where it's not a stable relationship. Like you guys got into it probably for the wrong reason, ended up knocking her up, making a mistake. You think you're cool, like you're gonna, we'll be great, and there's excitement, and like we're gonna support each other, and then quickly just like
until you realize you're going to work to literally pay for diapers. And like that's what you're going to work for today.
Working nonstop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now that was a jolt. That one I think I could relate to, at least personally, but it was a jolt to watch it, because I've observed, and again, you talk about people that you know.
Yeah.
I knew people who literally, and I didn't realize what I was watching at the time, and when I got older, I realized you forfeit the rest of your childhood, and I would say childhood. If you want to call it youth, you can call it youth. But 18 is legally an adult.
Yeah.
Our brains, especially for the guy, the male brain literally doesn't even stop developing until like 28.
Mm-hmm.
So you sacrifice so much of your childhood.
Yeah.
When stuff like that goes down. And there are good and bad sides of it. Because, and I've always like done the math on this. Could you imagine having a kid at 18? That kid's 6 years old. You're 24.
That's wild.
And
that's the thing where like I just turned 25, thinking of like, okay, I have a kid at 18. He's 6 by 24. There's like, between 18 and 24, between 18 and 24, I've been like Haiti 3 times. I've done all these things and all. Yeah. It's like there's no way I could have done any of that. None of it.
Now there are plenty of people out there that had their kids young, and they absolutely killed it. Like, did a great job. They persevered. Their kids ended up stable. They ended up stable. But I do think about all of that time that you have to afford yourself to develop mentally and emotionally. And now, in the process of developing mentally and emotionally, you throw in a child who's developing mentally and emotionally. So yeah, that was the one that was, I think, the most fascinating in the sense of like I learned with Zach, because that is just something you watch very quickly. Like, my man was a kid. Like, he shotgunning beers, right? He's standing up on the freaking roof. He's standing up on the roof. And by the way, I've literally been the person on the ground when a friend did that.
Like,
that just gave me anxiety, bro.
Yeah,
that junk gave me anxiety.
And like,
I was like, he gonna die in the first 10 minutes of the freaking documentary, bro.
Yeah,
like,
and like in California, it was like all the homes are like where I grew up. It wasn't like 2-story homes and stuff. It wasn't
singles,
as big,
bro.
This one, it was like a 2-story, 3-story house. It was high, and I was looking at it. I was like.
Because he says, I'm at the effing top level of my effing house. And I was like, what you mean top level? Because the camera makes it seem like he may be up on a single. Yeah. And when they do it from the street view, he's literally on like the top of the attic roof. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no.
All you need is one bad step, and you're done.
And
he's intoxicated.
Right. Yeah. They're both, him and his roommate are wasted. And I was like, yo. But yeah, he's doing it. He literally go from that. And then, they had the conversation about, I forget if it was before or after that scene, about, I can't believe like she's just gonna have a baby. But he says something that I think about even before, and I thinking about it now, was he's like, I feel like I'm screwed because I know that at some point I should have like taken the class on this.
Yeah. Where
that was one where I'm like,
before they had the baby.
Oh my God.
When he said that, I was like, yeah.
Yes.
You're correct.
Yes.
What do you mean?
And there's no.
Yeah, that's. I've never had a kid, and like I know you're supposed to do that, but I think that's part of it also now, where media exposes you to all that and like lets you know that, hey, you're supposed to have all that, and so. But the interesting thing, I think the other part of Zach's story that I wanted to explore, what was it? It was I think the part that ties it in all together with him. So we've kind of explored each one, and Nina I'll explore also, but with Zach, his you see kind of his past that you see that like we've seen in other people, or some of us may have seen in our own lives, is that you see his dad was an alcoholic and like was abusive towards his mom, and you kind of start to see those traits in him, where like there's a point in the documentary where he basically like Bing is talking to one of their friends or stuff, and the friend is explaining how they how Nina and Zach got into a fight, and basically Bing interviews Nina about it, and Nina tells him that Zach hit her and he tossed her and all this, and this is kind of why. Because originally the friend makes it seem like Nina was the one hitting Zach and losing her mind. Yeah. But Nina was like, yeah, I did that because he tossed me, and it was like going insane. Yeah. And you could see Bing kind of being uncomfortable with that. Like, no, he was totally uncomfortable with that when he first. I was gonna say. No, he was totally uncomfortable with it when he first like heard about it, but he was struggling with how to bring it up, because he had, and I think, and like one of the other parts that like just made me mad uncomfortable was when they were sitting in the car at the grocery store, and or it was at the burger place or wherever. Yeah. Zach ran in to get the food, and Bing asked her at that moment, and it was like, hey, like, how do you feel if I ask Zach if he hit you? And she immediately was like, no, like, don't do that at all. Like, just don't. And it just made me cringe, where I was just like that's obviously the wrong answer, but I know
you feel it.
I know why you're answering like that, because it's like
there's like, so many layers.
It's it's gonna end terribly for her.
Yeah, it's either gonna come back at me phically, or just the fear of like, if it does come back.
Yeah, you just fear what's gonna happen to her. Yeah, it's just like, this dude drinks a lot, obvious alcoholic, like,
Yeah.
and when he's out, like intoxicated, he loses his mind, and so it's like can't imagine like him getting drunk and like hearing about that and like just going off on her. But there's several quotes that kind of stood out to me throughout the documentary that I kind of wanted to highlight, and we'll kind of start with a couple I have for Nina and Zach, that since we've been kind of talking about them. But one of the ones, it goes along. So I think Bing finally confronts Zach towards the end of the documentary about hitting Nina.
Yeah.
And
bro, my low key, I didn't realize that my whole, like, I was literally clenching on it because I watched it on my phone.
Yeah.
Literally, my whole body was clenching until after that scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. And like the way he explained, he was kind of beating around the bush about it.
Yeah.
It was basically like you could tell, because as soon as Bing brings it up, his reaction was like one of those like, oh crap, like how do I lie about this, or like how do I talk about this without seeming bad?
Yeah.
But like one of the quotes he says in that moment is, "You don't need to hit women, but sometimes you have to slap a bitch." And he said that, and I was just like, like, come on, dude.
You
like,
officially become what you
What-
hate and ran away from.
yeah. You're essentially your dad. You became your dad. And like the way, because he said that laughing and jokingly, and like he tried to play it off or whatever, but it was basically like one of those, just like, no, dude, there's no way to put it.
Nope.
You're an abuser. Like you're
an abusive alcoholic.
Yeah, you have serious problems. Like, and so when he said that, it like he just sitting there watching. It made me mad, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It was just, it was. Yeah, that was super uncomfortable. And then one of the quotes that broke my heart really was this from Nina, where this was also towards the end of this was literally before like this scene where Zach basically said the whole thing about having to slap women or whatever.
Yeah.
I forgot what Bing asked her.
Sad, bro.
I forgot what Bing asked her, but basically one of her last things she said on the documentary was, "I've always been something to someone. I was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's significant other, and now someone's mom. I never got that chance to figure myself out."
Yeah.
And that to me really, her story is the most heartbreaking of all three, because like you see Carrie in his triumph and kind of like how like you see all he dealt with and stuff like that, and just kind of you see growth through him. Zach is interesting because you don't really see you see some growth, but at the same time you see like Zach is just, it's weird, like where it's just one of those, it's like you have some growth and stuff, but you also have some more deeper underlying issues. And it's one of those for him, like, it's like good. It's like, yeah, you realize you have an alcoholic problem, which is like most people like will deny that and stuff. But it's like for him, it's like, yeah, I noticed like I have an issue with that and stuff. Yeah. So it's one of those. It's like you can be fixed, or like not even fixed, but like someone can help you cope with your issues, like because he's very open about it and very talking about it and stuff like that, and he's not very defensive. So it's like one of those, is like there's hope for you. And also like he's basically he basically doesn't, like he had a baby with Nina, but he's basically free on his own. Like he basically, like they basically split up. He went, does his own thing, and he kind of stopped supporting her. That's why she eventually went out to make him start paying child support.
Yep.
So mine is paying child support. He's basically like free with his life and kind of doing. He's got a new girlfriend who basically supports him now.
Yeah.
And so he's carrying on with his life. But Nina, she's the one here where she didn't ask for this child, and I'm sure was one of those grateful for the child and stuff. But just hearing her talk about that, where it's just one of those like, I've always been something to someone. I was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's significant other, and now someone's mom. I never got that chance to figure myself out. And it's just one of those, it's like all those, like she was forced to grow up so quickly, and the idea of never getting to figure it out for yourself is just so sad. And like that
That quote made me think a lot about myself because, like, I'm 28, gonna be 29 in November.
Yeah.
And Kara and I are talking about having kids. And one of the things that I've been working towards, and this is the watching this story made me think a lot about it, and thinking back on some of the other stories and people that I've been around made me think a lot about this idea of don't put yourself in a position to when you have a kid, you'll resent the kid from taking something away from you.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can't decide your situation. A lot of times you can. And what's crazy is my biggest concern with having kids, with people having kids super young, especially when I observe current students' trajectories and former students' trajectories, even some of them having kids literally under 21.
Yeah.
Less than like just the age. I think a lot about what they'll realize later was robbed of them in the process of having to raise a child. It's not the kid's fault. But I thought about that a lot when she said that, because there's so many things that you have to be to other people that it can sometimes be hard without a kid to figure out who you are. And that was just one of those things that I thought about a lot, is like when it comes to kids, don't put yourself in a position to resent that kid for robbing you of something. Yeah. Because that's what can happen. Like, you got this baby, especially like nights that baby will be crying. Yeah. And you can't sleep. And you got to get up at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden, you end up hating this kid.
You're gonna be upset at him,
right? Don't try your best not to put yourself.
And in those moments of anger, when they're older, like, you will have a lapse of judgment where you'll say something harmful. Yeah. And like, you'll basically reveal and I'm sure you won't mean it, but it's just one of those, like, you'll say something you regret, and like that can end up affecting the kid.
That'll end up affecting, as we clearly see in this documentary. And
it's basically a reoccurring cycle. Yeah, it can become
as we can see in this documentary, that you could say something that will not only potentially affect them, but that will potentially affect their kid. Yeah. That's something that, man, I watch people become parents. We got a friend of ours now who's about to pop out too. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think about it. I think about that a lot, in knowing that the decisions that we make now affect people that aren't even alive yet, which is kind of wild. And that is shown you in this documentary in such a raw, uncomfortable, and very real sense. But no, Nina's story, man. Yeah. She's the only one where, like, these three guys are kind of orbiting each other, which are orbiting this like culture. Yeah. She's the only one where you're like, the only thing that she's orbiting is Zach, and like there's nothing like pouring in. Yeah. It's all just like pouring out. Yeah. So that's talk about heartbreaking. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So the last three of these quotes I have basically focus around Kieri, and his story was super interesting, and just seeing his growth, kind of just learning about his past and all that. And a lot of, like, most of these quotes, these last three, revolve around a lot of stuff his dad told him, which each of these really like stood out to me. And quickly with Kieri's interesting because Kieri I related to a lot, because like both of us growing in that skate culture, and then the other thing for it was the fact that he was a black kid that hung out with like a bunch of white kids and stuff. Yeah. And that like for me, that's been a big part of me here, really, in North Carolina more. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was more relatable in the sense of, like, when I grew up in California, I was the kid that grew up with the Hispanics and Asians. And that was just the area I lived in, where it was like majority Hispanics, Asians, and then there was rarely any blacks and a few whites there. And so, like, all my friends were basically Hispanic and Asians. Yeah. So I was the odd man out. But, like, for me, I guess in that skate culture, it was a little different than with Kieri, where I didn't have those weird racial tension moments as like he did in some of them, where there's that one point where, like, one of his white friends says the N-word a couple times, and you just see the uncomfortability in his face. Like, for me, Mexicans got the green card to say the N-word for me, because, like, it's just one of those, like, yo, like, They just
bruh.
they just
I
like
lived in Martinez, California
Yeah,
for 5
like-
years. That
like,
junk, nobody
they-
can say that word quite
they'd
like.
call me the N word. I
Yes.
call them puto. We good. We keep
Yes,
it moving.
right,
Like
yeah.
it was just one of those like blacks and Hispanics are like that. So it was just one of those for me. It didn't affect me
Right.
as much and stuff, but like coming from like I've seen it also on the side where like growing up with white friends, like or hanging out with a lot of white friends and people, it's just you see him kind of dissect some of that, and he's like, yeah, you know, I hang out with a lot of white friends, and I think his dad struggled a lot with like the fact that he hung out with a lot of white friends, and he kind of explained that in the story.
Yep.
But like one of the things his dad had told him was his dad said to him, being black is cool because you get to prove people wrong every day. And I heard that and I was like, damn.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Damn, that's like so true. That's so true because it's like everyone that's not black has so much, and it's mainly white people, if we're being honest, has so much like preconceived notions about you every day.
Yes.
Where it's like, yo, every day's a chance to prove that person wrong. And I think that for me stood out to me the most so much because like for me, I was always the guy that like, oh, you're basically a white black guy, where like you would laugh it off, but after a while it was just like, and I'd get it from both sides. It was one of those. It was like get it from a white dude and get it from like black people also. And it's one of those like I'll just kind of laugh it off and like, huh, whatever. But like I think the thing that bothered me with the most with that is the fact is like that's stupid as hell because it's just like, all right. On both sides of it, like you saying that you're like a white person saying that you're basically clarifying that like you like me because like I'm similar to you. Like it's just one of those where like
Right.
you're holding your race higher
Right.
than this race, and then for black people where it's like, oh, you basically look at me like I'm an enemy, and also this idea of like, all right. I think I don't know how I'm trying to word it. I think he explores it in an interesting way where one of the things Kiri talks about where he's just like I enjoy having white friends and stuff like that because it's like I get to show them kind of what I grew. It's one of those. It's like you're never gonna know this is the way I remember how I was gonna explain it. So there's Killer Mike of Run the Jewels.
Yeah.
So he has a series on Netflix that's pretty fascinating. Also, I think it's called Triggered with Killer Mike, and basically each week he just like takes a look at preconceived notions and like I don't even know how to explain this. It's
Right.
ridiculous, but like it's really entertaining. But one of the episodes, he takes a look at the biker gang.
Oh yeah, I saw some stuff popping up on Twitter.
What is it's the Angel? Is it what's the famous biker gang?
Is it? Oh my gosh, I'm about to look it up.
It's Angel.
I know who you're talking about. It's something. It's like the Angels of Death or like something.
Gosh, man. Momentary.
Hell's Angels.
Hell's Angels. Yes.
Sheesh.
Hell's Angels. So he basically takes a look at Hell's Angels. He was like, yo, I was on Amazon and I saw Hell's Angels. They over here selling merch on Amazon.com. And it's just like, yo, it's crazy how America basically accepts some gangs and like you look at Crip and Bloods, like, yo, like two different notions. Like, how is it that Hell's Angels can capitalize off being Hell's Angels while like they're still a gang and
While
they
the
have a
government-
history.
The government waged a war on the
Yeah.
Crips and the Bloods during the 90s. So
Yeah, and they
you're
have a
like-
history of doing bad stuff and all. And like he was interviewing some people about it. It was like, well, the Hell's Angels, they like do a lot of community stuff, and they're very like, it's like,
Yeah, so does
Bro,
the
like,
mafia.
yeah, the Crips, yeah, the mafia
There's
do
no
that.
group of people that takes care of
Yeah,
their community
and
better
then,
than
like
the mafia.
yeah, and then the Crips and the
The
Bloods.
Italian and the Irish mafia is better.
Yeah, and so he ended up interviewing this Crip gang in Atlanta, and he was just kind of talking to them. They were like, "Oh yeah, we do a lot of community stuff. We do a lot of backpack giveaways and stuff like that." And so basically, the whole notion.
That's Gang 101.
Yeah, the whole notion of the episode was basically like, yo, if the Hells Angels can sell merch on Amazon and make profit for it, like, why can't the Crips and the Bloods? So basically, the idea was like the Crips were gonna start a soda, a Cripicola, and so basically they came up together, went through all the branding of it, created the soda, and then they went out and tried to pitch it to different stores. And so the initial reaction with the stores, it was just like, everyone's just like, yo, like the Crip gang, like Crip was like, well, no, we don't want to be associated with you because like
Right.
y'all are a bunch of killings or
Yeah.
violence or like stuff like that. It's like, what if someone comes blood or whatever? And then so from there it doesn't work out, and so they kind of do one of those study groups where it's like they bring them in, they have them try the product out, and then they kind of a focus group or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the gang was watching it from like a double screen, and they brought these people in, and they first had him try the soda, and they was like, oh, it's really good and stuff like that. Then they showed him the label of it, and it's like Crip, like the gang. It's like, oh no, that's horrible. I would never buy this. It's like,
Right.
oh, because like they're known killers, they do this, and
Yep.
like, what if like someone gets the wrong idea that this is what I'm repping and tries to kill me and stuff like that, and you just watch like the gang getting upset in the background and stuff. And so finally, Killer Mike first comes in and kind of talks to him, and then he brings in the guys. But it's basically from at that point, at that idea where it's like the overall message of the video is like, you had all these preconceived notions of this dude, so like they're evil, they're violent stuff, and then like when they got to meet the gang members and stuff, and like heard about like what some of the stuff the gang members do for the community and all that, and like
Yeah.
how they're reshaping what it is they do, it's just like, oh, I didn't realize that and stuff. And it's just one of those where his point was basically just like, we need to begin to just be able to have those conversations with those people, like have a wide table, talk to the, like I want to talk to the, he said, I want to talk to the racist nationalists or whoever it is, because
Yeah.
like I want to talk to the Jew or whatever. It's just one of those, it's more the idea of like you're not gonna learn nothing unless you kind of talk to those people and like I guess the way of explaining it is like, the only way I'm gonna help you like break your preconceived notion of it is like you getting to hang, like us getting to spend time together. It's like spending, yes, it's just basically the idea of spending time with people different from you. And so I think for me, why like, especially here, like I hang out with a lot of white people or whatever, and it's not like I just do that by choice. It's just one of those like then like kind of just how environment is, where it is and stuff like that. But I think for me, why it's, I've never seen it in an issue is like I said, growing up in California, like growing up all my life, I've grown up in an area where I'm the minority, or like I'm just like everyone else around me is different for the most part, except till moving to North Carolina. There's like more black people here and stuff, but it's even in that idea, it's still like I'm around white people way more. But I've never had an issue of like, oh no, I feel like I'm spending way too much time with like these other people and I should be hanging out. I've never felt like, no, I need to hang out with more black people, because for me it's just always one of those natural, and like it helped me learn more about their culture and them learn more about me, because it's one of those where like they didn't think, oh man, like it was never one of those like, oh, why are all black people like that and stuff like that, because it's like, you know how I am and stuff like that. So it's like one of those like, you're not categorizing everyone, and
Right.
I'm not categorizing your whole race.
You're less prone to jump to a conclusion because you go, Ben ain't like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I know, I like, and it's not even as, sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes it's just like, I've lived in and with and spent time with people where, in my mind, it's possible that my preconceived notions might be incorrect.
Yeah.
Like, they just might be
Yeah.
might be incorrect.
Yeah.
And that's what has always bothered me about, and I've dealt with this much less because my complexion and my features are very like diverse. That's just how the way it is.
Yeah.
But it's so funny, you show up in certain cultures, like with either darker or more specific cultures, they'll be like, "What are you?" And you go to like a Caucasian, primarily Caucasian group of people, they'll go, "Oh, you're black." Like it's just kind of known. But
Yeah.
one thing that's always bothered me is like the sports and like the dancing and the music stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, you know, you must play basketball or play football,
Yeah.
or you must know how to dance, or like
Yeah.
you know, you go to a dance, people
Yeah.
assume, and it bothered me less because it was less of a you know, because I'm black, I know how to dance. It was less that and more of like, now I know you have a picture of what I'm supposed to be
Yeah.
based on my physical appearance.
Yeah.
So like simply just based on.
Yeah.
And even going back to like Minding the Gap, that quote, as far as proving people wrong, for me meant more than just like they're the negative ones. It's the ones where like people just assume, and this is about all cultures. People will just assume that you are.
Yeah.
And it's bananas.
You're set within
they
this
have
box.
Nothing.
Nothing.
They have nothing
Yeah.
that supports that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But that's like I know this is how the brain sorts information. There's a certain expectation as you grow up that when you see a certain thing, that a certain thing is going to be a certain thing. But with people, it's just not that simple.
Yeah.
It's
And
just
that's the thing, like for me, where, cause I had a couple weeks ago where we went out, me and a friend went out, and then afterwards we hung out at one of our friends' house, and this one dude, it was like pouring rain, and at this point it was like 3 a.m. So me and the friend were going back to our car, and this white dude that was there with us also, he was like, all right, like we all left at the same time.
Yeah.
And so once we got downstairs, he was just kind of like, yeah, all right, I'll see you guys later. And I'm like, are you about to walk right now in this rain? It was like raining and like 30 degrees outside. He's like, yeah, I only live like 15 minutes down. I was like, bro, stop being
15 minutes.
Yeah, stop being dumb. And it's one of those, like, he's still slightly intoxicated, so like when you're drunk you think you could do anything and stuff, but he's
Yeah,
just like,
right.
stop being dumb, here, I'll drive you. So like we get in the car, we start driving, and he started talking. I think he was telling us about some places to check out and stuff, and then he had mentioned one place, and then I don't know why. He mentioned a place, and I was just kind of like, oh, that's cool. Where's that place? And I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to check that out one day. And he gets silent for a second. He was just like, something you should know is just like that place has like a Confederate flag in it or whatever. I was like, oh, okay. Like, just didn't think much of it.
Right.
And then he began he got into this ramble of just kind of talking about the Confederate flag, and he was just like, yeah, you know, like he kind of started sharing his thoughts on it, where he's like, you know,
Yeah.
because it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
my family have the Confederate flag, and like they like to them it meant something completely different, and he was just kind of justifying like what it meant to him and stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, and I was just sitting there, I was kind of listening to it. I was like, okay, that's like, bro, it's like, it was one of those, I think it awkwardly kind of came up, and then at that point he felt like he had to defend himself or whatever. And for me, it was just like, bro, like, dog, I know you're not racist or anything like that, like, you good, like it was just one of those, he felt awkward because it was me and a light-skinned dude. So, but like my friend was kind of starting to get upset about it, and afterwards we were talking about it, and he was just like, he brought it up, and I was like, he kind of got upset with me for not like getting on the dude more about it. But I was like what good is that gonna do or whatever?
Right.
And it's one of those, like, I want to hear that, like, I want to hear your side of the story, because
Right.
it's like, yeah, my assumption of it is I associate it with racism.
Yeah.
But like hearing your, like, let me hear your side of it and why it is you feel that way about it and stuff. where and so for me it's just always been like that. I've
Yeah.
always been the type. I think that's the other thing where being around so many white people, like
It's been beneficial.
yeah, it's very beneficial because I hear a lot of their viewpoints and stuff, and I'm able to like either like tell like yeah, this is I agree with you on this, and like this is where I stand on this side of it and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's always been healthy conversations where I've never like gotten in an argument or anything like that. And for me, I just know I've gotten to the point where like I don't take it so serious, where it's just like, bro, life goes on and stuff. Like if it's getting to a point where it's getting heated or whatever, it's just like it's not worth talking about it. It's not worth.
And that's so. And man, I gotta commend you on that. Like that is an incredible way to go about that. And I would even encourage, like, for the people that might be listening, like if you're one race and you find yourself having grown up in predominantly one, because that's a lot of my life too. And I think every watch this documentary is very much in seasons. First 10, really 11 years of my life was all African Americans. There was nothing else.
Yeah.
And then literally from the time that I was from 10, 11 to about 15, it was literally just all Asians and Hispanics. And then when I got to carry all white folk, like that's how it was. If you find yourself in that place where you're kind of like the odd man out, it is tough. It can be tough because you feel like an outcast, but use it as an opportunity to understand the other side. Like use it as an opportunity. One of the things that I think is really cool, and I think even an example of that is on the flip side of using it as an opportunity to understand is you get to be a resource to those people. Like with all the stuff that's been happening in the past few years, I think it's so cool. Not that I get to be the guy. I think it's so cool that cats will text me and be like, yo, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Like white guys will just text me and be like, what do you think about it? Matter of fact, and I won't say his name on here just because I didn't ask permission. You and I are in a text group with a friend, and I feel like we've been in that text group for like 2 years now.
Yeah.
And usually it's music and like funny videos and stuff like that. Yeah. But I know just in conversation with him, the reason why he does that is because the vast majority of his surroundings is white.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like that's the reason
and
why.
I appreciate that text chain a lot because I look forward to whatever he's sending every day, and it's one of those where like he's really into hip hop and stuff like that and all. But it's one of those like I know he's like. It's one of those, I think he appreciates the culture and he doesn't take it for granted. He appreciates the culture and he recognizes, like, he gives, like, proper respect to it. Where it's like, I know this is not mine. Yeah. But, like, the fact that I get to enjoy this with you guys and stuff like that is something special. And it's just one of those, it's cool.
And I remember when he would even do videos, he would process stuff through us. He would ask us to be in stuff specifically for reasons like that. Yeah. And like if you find yourself on the flip side of that, where you've got a friend, don't be the person that says, "Oh, I've got a black friend." Like, don't be that person. Yeah. Actually use them as a resource. Lean into how they're living. Like, know that person. Yeah. Don't just know of that person and use them as like a token in the conversation. No, actually to validate your point of view. Like, use them as a resource and lean into that.
Yeah. So last couple, was that the only? Wow, 2 more. Okay, we got 2 more. But and this one also goes along that last quote. But this one also was. Kieri, his dad talking to him and him kind of just telling about this. Like he was basically like, my dad asked me this one day, and his dad basically asked him if you could choose to be black. Or no, his dad told him that. His dad told him if you could choose again, choose to be black. And his dad's explanation was, because we have to deal with these issues, it just makes these other things that my white friends have to deal with not even be an issue. And I thought about that, and I was just like, yeah, like that's so interesting, where it's just like, it's little stuff like that where like you just have such a, I feel like I have such a greater appreciation because, we do have to deal with so much. Like, you see someone else deal with it, where like you see someone else deal with something where it's like, I'm not writing off whatever you're dealing with, or like, hey, like, yes, I'm sure you're like, whatever you're dealing with is an issue or whatever, but it just it makes you have a greater appreciation because you're just like, like I don't know how to word it.
Yeah.
Because we have to deal with these issues. It just makes these other things that my white friends have to deal with not even be an issue.
Yeah.
And that's one of those where like I fully understand, but at the same time it's just hard to explain because you're just like, I think one good example of that to think about is like a lot of like white friends would just be like trashing on their parents or stuff like that, and like they'll have both parents in the household and stuff, and like, yo, middle class, steady income and stuff like that, and you'll see a lot of those, and like I've seen it with many, like I like in that perspective, I'm like, man, just be grateful you got both of your parents in your life,
Right.
like
Right.
like some little things like that. When I like, because when I heard that quote, that was one of those like the quick examples where it's just like you're dealing with it. It's like, yeah, I understand. Like, oh, sorry. Like, it sucks your dad took your keys away or whatever. But it's like, bro, your dad took your keys away from the car he bought you.
Yeah. There's so many things there.
Yeah.
That other kids, that the kid that lives probably
Like,
within
just-
250 feet of you,
Yeah.
dad, keys, right? Like discipline.
Car that dad paid
like
for.
discipline.
Yeah.
Like there's so like financial,
It's just so
relationship. There's
layered.
so many things there.
Yeah.
That you literally you're going to class with a kid tomorrow
Yeah.
morning that has literally doesn't have any of those things.
Yeah.
So
Like for me, my first
Yeah.
car I bought, it was a Saturn LS, I think. And like I worked at Hollister for like 2.5 years, worked at Dick's Sporting Goods for another year or so, saving up money and stuff. And I was finally able to buy that car. And like that was one of the most rewarding things for me ever.
yeah. Oh,
And like,
man.
and I think it's just little things like that where like people complain about like having to, oh, you know, I gotta work to like do this or something, like, or I gotta babysit and stuff like that. And it's just like,
Bro.
like, yeah, and it's just so many stuff
Yeah.
where like you see them complain, and that's the thing. There's like many other things they complain with where like I'm not gonna write it off and stuff, but there is also a lot of those different things where you deal with, and I'm just like, that's I'm sorry, dude, that's nothing. Like,
Yeah.
that is nothing.
Yeah, not to degrade your issue
Yeah.
so much as to give you like a frame of reference, like a perspective on the spectrum. Like you're acting like that's an 8, but that's not an 8 on the human scale. Like it is nice to be able to be in a position to, like, again, be a resource to people, to where it's like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't be complaining about this because this person over here is dealing with this, and this.
Yeah. And then the last quote, this was kind of the last one, and bringing it back in with the skate culture, kind of just to wrap that up and probably this up. But this is Kiri again, and Bing had asked him about, he was like, you seem to you get mad a lot at skateboarding. And Kiri said, I get mad at skateboarding like a lot that, this is Kiri saying, he said, I get mad at skateboarding like a lot that at the end of the day, I can't stay mad at it. And Bing asked him, and Bing said to him, but it hurts you. And he said, yeah, so did my dad, but I love him to death.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was just like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's so-
I forgot about that one because I was thinking about the one in the very
Yeah.
beginning where he's talking about I could be on the verge of a mental
Yeah.
breakdown. And like,
Yeah.
But that, you don't. I guess I'll say this: I can't explain unconditional love better than that, and that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
exactly what
That's
that is.
that's the epitome of
That's what that
unconditional
is.
love. And yeah, I think it takes a lot of like strength to be able, like, for him to be able to say that after revealing all that he's dealt with and stuff, and like just how abusive his father was and all. But it's just like, at the end of the day, that's still my dad. And like for me, looking back at it, and it made me look back at my life, and I was just like, because like I said, I mentioned like I clashed a lot with my stepdad when I was younger, and that affected like my relationship with my mom and stuff. But it was just like I agree with that. At the end of the day, like that, like he's my stepdad and stuff, but like he's basically my dad. He's been in my life my whole life, and like it's one of those I look back at it where like middle school, our relationship was just very toxic and stuff, and it's one of those I deeply regret. But it's just one of those. It's like for me, I'm glad like I was able to patch that relationship up quicker, because for some people, like that doesn't happen until that person's on their deathbed or like way later in life. And so as much as like I might have regrets of how our relationship was when I was younger, it's just like, look, I'm just grateful enough. I recognize it like early enough for me where like I could start patching that and like working on that. And it's one of those like, yeah, you might have hit me and stuff and all that, but it was just like I was a punk ass kid. I deserved like 90% of the ass whoopings I got. Like I used to go in my room. I would act like I'd go sleep. I'd be sleeping, and I'd basically just break the screen door off, like my window, and like sneak out the back, take my skateboard, go hang out with my friends, and come back at night and like try to sneak back in and stuff. And I'd like get beat and all that. And like it was just a lot of like stuff like that. It was a lot of in that culture, and it was just a lot of like rebellion. That's what. There's a lot of rebellion going on and back and forth, and it's that same tension explained with cops, where it's like, yeah, there's some things I probably was doing wrong on my end, and there were some things they were doing wrong at their end, and I think both sides try to overdo it, overcompensate, and that's where the clash comes, and you see that, like a lot. And so, but yeah, that quote, like you said, that's just the epitome of unconditional love, and it was such a great way to end that documentary. And I think it's just one of those to show how smart of a kid Kerry is. Yeah. Despite like what you like, despite the notion you get seeing, like you just see him and you just kind of make all these assumptions of him. But as like, you hear him talk enough, you're like, this is actually a really smart kid.
Bro, he said something that twice in the documentary, that when you get to the end, you realize as a human being, you can't see everything coming, but you can know that life eventually will. Yeah. And he says something twice during the documentary. He says, talking about when in time's going by so fast. Mm-hmm. He says at some point, and I can't remember if he says I or if he says like we. Where he literally says, I'm gonna have to grow up. And it was so crazy because like he knew that everything was gonna come to a point where it could not be that way anymore. Yeah. Like there had to be something else. And it was crazy because what essentially we got to watch all the way up to the end is the culmination of exactly what he was talking about. Yeah. Was the tensing up against that moment of, do I grow up, do I not? We almost even rebel against that because it feels like a parent. Yeah. We get to that moment and we resist up against it, to some breaking through, and to some of those guys. Really, I think about Zach when you were talking about Zach. Maybe not doing so well at that. At
and
those
to
moments.
go with that, that kind of like it breaks down where like with like your skate crew, they had their crew. I had my crew when growing up. You had your crew, like people that you hung out with, even if you didn't skate. Like you had your crew of like the skate people you hung out with, your community or whatever. And it's one of those, you got the crew, and then you just kind of saw how that dynamic, because that dynamic, it lasts, like if y'all all stay in the same location, it lasts some for whatever, but everyone eventually breaks off. And so it kind of just showed you a little of like how like you break up, like how people broke off from that culture, where it was just like this dude realized he had to grow up. This dude was forced to grow up because he had a kid. These dudes like focused more on their education and like took that route and stuff. And so you just kind of see that interesting dynamic where like, and that's like kind of looking back at my friends where like there's a couple that had kids early on. There's a couple, never went to college and just kind of, forced to grow up early.
Right.
There's like me and some of the others where it's like you realize you have to grow up. And like for me, it was way different because like once I moved to high school, that kind of like moved here, that kind of shifted and everything. But it's just like, you see that where like some, you're like, okay, I can't do this forever. Gotta grow up. Some are forced to grow up. And then some are just stuck on it, hanging onto the good old days type of thing. And like it's just an interesting overall dynamic. And Zach almost falls in that category also of like that still holding on to those good old days type, where it's just like Carrie at one point he's like, I can't be skating out here all the time. Like I don't really have that time. And like Zach for him, like he wants to hold on to that so bad, and he wants to just hold on to like living like they're back in high school and just doing whatever they want. So it's a lot, but man, it's
highly recommended.
That's one of my favorite just projects overall I've ever seen. And like it's one of those I want to go back and watch it again. And it's a really, I would encourage you to watch that and also watch Mid-90s. And Mid-90s is also only like an hour and a half long. It's very short. But both movies really explore the skate culture so much, and for like people that didn't grow within it, it gives you a great understanding of like what like just what that like growing within that meant for those people. And like it gives you a bigger underlying like just a real great look into it. So it's I hope it wins the Oscar. It does, and I'm glad it's getting the recognition it's getting right now, because it is really a dope project. And just to record like that, something like that over 12 years, be able to tell that story in an hour and a half, like that's awesome. And that's one of those things I think with something like that, it's so easy. It could have easily been like a 4-hour project.
Well, that's what I was just thinking of, like, because you've made videos, I've made videos, and especially
like the editing process is horrible
because movies is different.
Movies,
you get the script way before you have your story way before you ever start filming. Documentaries and stuff like that is different, bro. This dude probably had like 10, 12 hours. Probably more than 12 years. We're talking about 12 years.
12 years, yeah.
We're talking about days worth of footage. Like on multiple different formats. I can't even believe that they found a way to, I don't even think it was like an hour and 20 minutes. To do something like that. So super dope project. I hope it gets all of the things specifically for documentary. But man,
it's dope. It's dope. So
I got 29 days on my Hulu free trial. So we're gonna watch that one more time, at least one more time. But there's a lot of other stuff that I'm looking forward to getting to see too. Yeah, it's phenomenal. So it's already been long enough, so we gonna go head on out of here. I gotta eat. Gotta get to Chipotle before they close. So, Culture Discourse Podcast, and if you've listened this far, you're a real one. Hey.
You can follow us on Twitter at the letter C Discourse Pod. You can follow me at Thundercat Felix.
Yep, and you can catch me at Chase Actually on Twitter. Tag us, whether it be with our personal accounts or the C Discourse Pod. We want to hear from you, especially like with stuff like this. We want to hear your thoughts. So go ahead and if you got Hulu or if you can bum an account off of somebody else, go ahead and give it a view. Let us know what you think. We're looking forward to hearing what you guys think, or even what you think of our commentary regarding the Minding the Gap as well. But we're going to wrap this thing out, so we'll catch you later.
Yes, sir. Culture Discourse Podcast. We're out. Catch y'all next week.